influence of fiction and non-fiction documentaries on shaping the image of our country in the English-speaking world. However, of course, there are good books as well. Just for a change, I'm giving you the example of this: The Russian Reader, History, Culture and Politics, and Natasha's Dance, A Cultural History of Russia. Well, actually, there are very interesting books that English authors and the English-speaking authors wrote about Russia. It's always interesting to me. To me, I think that's a fascinating thing to read about Russia in English, about their view of Russia, because sometimes we can get some glimpses of what we are used to, but what we don't notice in our lives. When you listen to foreigners speaking about Russia, when you listen to travelers and tourists praising or scolding something. And it's always interesting to look at yourself in the mirror. And now the media. The media is another very important sphere in which the image of the country is shaped. And here we speak of the newspapers and news portals. We speak of now of social media like Facebook, which is banned in the Russian Federation, I have to say it, TikTok and other social media. And the new media, YouTube and other influencers, as well as Wikipedia. Wikipedia is the same, is proliferating the right narratives and censoring the wrong narratives. I don't know whether it is still true, but Wikipedia used to be, how do you call it? It was edited by people, even the Russian Wikipedia is edited by people with strong anti-Russian views. And of course, the history of using the media for shaping the image of a country has a long history. Like this is a cartoon and a pamphlet, a newspaper article about Russia and England from 1853. And here we see a fable about the lion and the bear and the Turkish turkey, and the story of international politics in Europe at the time. The British lion has good cause to protest against the threatened disturbance of his peace by some other inferior animals, and among them the bear. Now, Russia, well, if you just again look at the headlines of these, of many newspaper articles, you'll see that they openly call Russia a threat. Russia is top threat to national security, US general says, which of course, and this is July 2015. And of course, since you live in Russia, you know, even intuitively, that Russia has never aspired to threaten the United States as a country. And why would it be a threat to the national security? Again, this stems from their view. I think this, well, Brzezinski's book explains this very well. If Russia becomes strong enough, it can potentially be a threat to American national security. Russia poses greater election threat than Iran, many US officials say. And again, this is 2020. Russia is a far bigger threat to Britain than Islamist terrorists, says head of army. Again, why would Russia threaten the UK, even, well, not the United States, but even the UK? Hello. Then, of course, there was this Skripal poisoning, when Russia was accused of poisoning Skripal's, a former Russian defector, a former Russian KGB officer, and his daughter. The problem is the British never gave any evidence. They only gave circumstantial or side evidence. They never gave you the proofs that it were the Russians who did that. Although they gave a very interesting, tempting story. I actually followed this story. They showed that 2 Russian Secret Service members did come to Britain on the same day from 2 different airports. They went to Salisbury, where they were supposed to meet Skripal. They did something. They were somewhere there, and then they left. And then finally, Skripal nearly died. And it all was made to look as if, well, they could be the assassinators, the murderers. But the phrase that Theresa May then said openly, she said, it is highly likely that those were Russians, which of course in English does mean that we have an 80 to 90% assurance that they are Russians. However, with no real convincing proofs, this highly likely became a meme in Russia because it started to mean the arbitrary foundations of accusations against Russia. It is highly likely that it is Russia who did this, who did that. And I think that this principle of highly likely is a good illustration to how the principle was used in the United States, is how Russia was accused of meddling, of interfering in the US elections in 2016, when against all odds, against all expectations, Donald Trump won against Hillary Clinton. So this is what what the Guardian wrote it earlier. Russian meddlers reportedly posed as right-wing news site to target U.S. voters, and there was a huge case which was called Russiagate, like the Russian scandal, that the Russians helped Russian trolls and Russian bots and Russian websites helped to influence the public opinion in the United States in favor of Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Right. And top officials from secret services, from other bureaucratic authorities spoke about Russian meddling, Russian interference. So Russiagate was everywhere. But then what do we hear now? Do we see now? We see that when Trump came to power a second time, they investigated, they published the materials which pointed to President Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton as people who basically invented this Russiagate to spoil Trump's presidential term. Despite the best efforts of Russiagate complicit media to dismiss as Russian disinformation, the latest revelation of this escalating scandal implicating President Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton in the treasonous years-long coup against President Trump, the public is paying attention to one's heads to roll. So people were following this, and Russiagate lies are being exposed. So they showed that the roots of this Russiagate go into American internal politics, and also to the Brits as well, who just helped them, do it. And the British imperial hand behind Russiagate and global governance exposed again. And again, I just wanted to remind you that this is not the first case when some party inside the UK or the United States uses this external image of an enemy, such as Russia, in their infighting, in their internal fighting. Remember, we discussed the Zinoviev's letter in the 20s, which was made to look as if it was a communist Zinoviev letter to the Communist Party of the UK to create a revolution in the UK, which was used to bring down the Labour government and to secure the power for the Conservatives, which was later on exposed even by the British historians as a fake. It was something which was made to influence the public opinion. So we see the same thing in the United States at the beginning of the 21st century. And no wonder that such things lead to fake news becoming possible, fake news like this? Because if Putin, according to all the newspapers of the world, is such a villain, then why wouldn't he release around 500 lions to make people stay indoors during the coronavirus restrictions? This was shortly exposed as a fake, but it just works well, clicks well with the other stories. Fake news: Russian President Putin unleashes 500 lions to keep people indoors and curb coronavirus. And here I'll stop. Although I have some more interesting material, and probably the most interesting material that I had, stockpiled for you, I'll leave it until next time. So some things that you will only exclusively hear from me. Well, some of them are not exclusive, but one of the stories is just exclusive. It's from my own experience, and it is connected with this sort of information war. Right, but anyway, thank you very much for your attention, and here I'll finalize this lecture of mine, and I'll continue it next time, which will be our basically almost final, probably final lecture. I don't know what we're going to do in 2 weeks' time. Maybe we're going to check your, first of all, I think I want to check your, to see all of us to see your articles on the website, right? So I think we'll probably devote this